12:15 p.m. here in Simmons and the Grenadines and the rest of the Eastern Caribbean. You're locked on to the Clean First Song WEFM 99.9. At this time, we have a Midday News sponsored by Courts, Simmons Limited.
Good afternoon and welcome to WEFM's Midday News, brought to you with the kind compliments of Court St. Vincent Limited.
Always wanted a motorcycle, but they've been too expensive. I pass in on my way to work and then boom, I see Courts have motorcycles outside. I'm excited. I get up one day, I go down, I spoke to this guy. I think his name was Sheena, this short, chubby little guy, you know. I purchased two bikes so far. It was the 150 SL and the 250 Dragon. These blue, beautiful AKT TT Dragon. This is my baby. I call her Becky. She gives me the best ride ever. My name is Storyboy Nick and I live to ride my AKT.
Welcome back to WEFM's Midday News, brought to you with the kind compliments of Court St. Vincent Limited. I am your presenter, Rajiv Providence. First, on the local scene, St. Vincent and the Grenadines is set to become the Eastern Caribbean's hub for the Alba Bank. In an interview with the Agency for Public Information on Monday, Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves said, given the size of the portfolio of the Eastern Caribbean within the Alba Bank, there is need for a representative office. We'll hear more from the Prime Minister.
St. Vincent and Grenadines has been selected as the place to have a representative office for the Eastern Caribbean. And approval has been given in principle at the Ministerial Council meeting of the Alba Bank. Incidentally, that meeting took place on the 5th of November. It was 14 years since the founding of that particular bank. And there'll be a ministerial meeting later in this year in which that decision in principle would be actualized, because people are going to come here from the Alba Bank and see places where they could rent workers whom they could hire to operate on the bank and the bank, including presumably one or two technical persons to look at the management of projects in the Eastern Caribbean. It's a very important institutional development.
That was the Prime Minister, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. The Prime Minister, who recently returned to the state from Venezuela, met with representatives of the Alba Bank to discuss a number of issues, including the US $2.5 million which has been secured through the Alba Bank for the reconstruction of the Kingston bus terminal, popularly known as Little Tokyo. This forms part of the government's urban development plan, of which the over $600 million port modernization project is a part of. The aftermath of a shooting incident in Union Island on Saturday, November 5th, 2022, has landed Cadwell Brown of Union Island in police custody. According to a release from the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force, Brown and Anthony Franklin, a 30 years old of Clifton, Union Island, got into an altercation after Franklin allegedly broke the windscreen of Cadwell's blue Suzuki Escudo. Cadwell reportedly took a gun and shot Franklin in the right side of his back, then threw the gun into the sea. Franklin was transported to St. Vincent via the Coast Guard and is in stable condition. Still on the local scene, reports of yacht-related break-ins have dropped significantly here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This is according to Minister of Tourism Carlos James, while discussing security as it relates to the tourism sector in SVG. The tourism minister noted that there has been an increased level of security in the country, with moves like the purchasing of the vessel named Captain Hugh Mulzac. We'll hear more from Minister James.
I'm not sure if recently you've been following the developments with our standing in terms of yacht-reported break-ins. We've dropped significantly in reports. And in fact, St. Vincent and the Grenadines was one of the countries which we've seen an increased level of security. Since we've purchased the Hugh Mulzac, it's now staying offshore. We have a lot more local patrols in the Grenadines and around the western coast of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So we have really improved on security, marine security. Also, the point you raised with security generally, when these facilities are operational, is something that we will have to look at in terms of more robust patrols and communications with police in terms of ensuring that there's that constant level of security and patrols around these hotspots and areas.
That was the Minister of Tourism, Carlos James, speaking on WEFM's Issue at Hand program. The 2022 cruise season kicked off on November 1st, 2022. There are a total of 305 scheduled cruise calls to SVG, 12 inaugural calls will be made by top-named cruise lines within the industry for this season. On to news in the region. A judge will decide on Thursday whether or not the passport of Antigua's Director of Public Prosecutions, Anthony Armstrong, who is facing fraud charges in relation to 3 land transactions, should be returned to him. The authorities in Jamaica said that the charges against the Jamaican-born attorney stem from the sale of 3 properties 18 years ago in which Armstrong represented the complainant, who was the vendor. Armstrong, who arrived in Jamaica last weekend in relation to the complaint, was charged by the police and released on $500,000 bail with surety. But when he appeared in court on Monday, his attorney, Hugh Wildman, expressed shock at the arrest of his client, saying that there was no basis for Armstrong to be charged. The Antigua and Barbuda DPP is contending that he is not guilty of the charges because the proceeds of the sale were paid over to the complainant's father, who he had authorized to be his agent while he was incarcerated in the United States. Hand Arnold, the official distributor of Pine Sol cleaners in Trinidad and Tobago, is advising of a voluntary recall of selected Pine Sol products sold in the USA, including products distributed internationally, was announced by the Clorox company. The recall is limited to the following items: Pine Sol multi-surface cleaners, 28-ounce. Fragrances include Lemon Fresh, Sparkling Wave, and Lavender. Pine Sol multi-surface cleaners, 48-ounce. Fragrances include Lemon Fresh, Sparkling Wave, and Lavender. Pine Sol Original 24-ounce, 40-ounce, 60-ounce, and 100-ounce are not impacted and can continue to be used safely as intended. The product lock code range for the impacted products is A4 and any number below 22249. These numbers are visible at the top of the bottle. Hand Arnold said they are working closely with their retailers and partners on this effort to ensure that the process is seamless. On the international scene, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has accused China of attempting to interfere in the country's elections. Mr. Trudeau accused Beijing of playing quote-unquote aggressive games with democracies and of targeting Canadian institutions. It comes as local media report that Canadian intelligence identified a clandestine network of Beijing-backed candidates at recent elections. At least 11 candidates were supported by China in the 2019 federal elections, officials reportedly told Mr. Trudeau. A Chinese foreign ministry spokesman said it has no interest in Canada's internal affairs. Citing unnamed intelligence officials, Broadcast to Global News reported that Beijing had directed funds to the candidates and that Chinese operatives had acted as campaign advisors to many candidates. In one case, funding of 250,000 Canadian dollars was directed through the office of an Ontario-based provincial MP. The operation, which was reportedly directed by China's consulate in Toronto, also sought to place operatives within the offices of serving MPs in an attempt to influence policy, the outlet alleged. And finally, in sports, a roller coaster run to the semifinals of the Men's T20 World Cup is a welcome to Pakistan cricket, says one of the team's coaches, Matthew Hayden. The Netherlands beating South Africa opened the door for Pakistan after they lost their opening 2 group matches. Wednesday's game with New Zealand, who are favorites to reach the final, is the latest chapter in Pakistan's storied history in global tournaments. Pakistan was beaten by fierce rivals India in their tournament opener before a surprise 1-run loss against Zimbabwe. The match in Sydney will be the 4th time New Zealand have met Pakistan in a World Cup semi-final, having lost the previous 3. As well as 1992, they were beaten in the 1999 50-over World Cup and the 2007 T20 competition. This has been WEFM's Midday News. I have been your presenter, Rajiv Providence. Join us again at 3 p.m. for WEFM's 3 p.m. News. WEFM's Midday News is brought to you with the kind compliments of Courts St. Vincent Limited.
Always wanted a motorcycle. motorcycle, but they've been too expensive. I pass in on my way to work, and then boom, I see courts of motorcycles outside. I'm excited. I get up one day, I go down, I spoke to this guy. I think his name was Sheena, this short, chubby little guy, you know. I purchased 2 bikes so far. It was the 150 SL and the 250 Dragon. This blue, beautiful AKT TT Dragon. This is my baby. I call her Becky. She gives me